finally, the new phase begins. Ukrainians found weak spots of Russians, doubled down there, pulled the reserves, and increased their counteroffensive pressure. At the same time, a big assault group of Russians of elite forces got ambushed to the south of Bakhmut, and there is a surprise in Kremlin. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. So, we have this Major General Igor Kirillov, who is also responsible for bio-defense of Russia, and he's basically saying that the Pentagon is developing the new bio-insects, specifically mosquitoes, who are carrying such diseases as AIDS and hepatitis B, and also all the other dangerous diseases. And yes, you guessed it, the target of these battle mosquitoes will be Russia. But just when you thought that this is already ridiculous enough, he also mentioned that this biochemical program has been also sponsored by other Western countries, and most likely Ukraine. So yeah, you guessed it. Imagine, Ukraine is giving money to America to develop battle mosquitoes to send them against Russians. Please let me know in the comments, what do you think? And of course, a lot of Russian government representatives, they mentioned that this is a terroristic act by the United States of America, right after my previous episode when I was talking about that Russian scientists were ordered to create a DNA targeting weapon to eliminate the specific race. This just does not fit inside my head. And long story short, in normal countries, whenever these high government and military representatives make statements like this, they'll be immediately sent straight to jail. But apparently in Russia, for some reason, this is normal under Putin's regime. And if you also think that they should be prosecuted even for just saying this, can you please like this video and subscribe to my channel? You can also follow my second channel, The Russian Dude Clips, where I post under 1-minute summaries every single day. The link is down below. But okay, now let's quickly switch our attention to Sergei Shoigu and his visit to North Korea, because, trust me, it gets even more ridiculous, you will see soon why. And then we'll go to the east of Ukraine, talk about the surprise in Kremlin and the ambush of Russians near Bakhmut, before switching our final attention to the south, where Ukrainians discovered a weak spot of Russians, brought trained reserves, and finally increased the counteroffensive pressure. And so yes, back to Sergei Shoigu. So as you can see from this picture, he already personally met the ruler of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, and he is finally very, very happy. Looks like Sergei Shoigu found his happy place, so who knows, he might even stay there. And long story short, after celebrating North Koreans winning in Korean War, according to North Koreans, the Kim Jong-un, he went to show off his military arsenal to Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu. At this point, probably North Korean weapons are much more powerful than Russian. And even though Sergei Shoigu most likely treats this trip as a vacation, allegedly the main purpose is to ask North Korea for weapons and ammunition for Russians. But okay, next we have one of the very first picture of public appearance of Yevgeny Prigozhin since his mutiny against Putin, where he is meeting the representatives of South Africa. And speaking more about Russia, recently they employed a new helicopter, K-52M, which they previously used in Syria. And this is a modified version of the previous K-52, and basically what it has a new anti-tank missiles with the range of up to 15 kilometers. And ultimately, now speaking about Ukraine, they started developing the artificial intelligence for their drones. And the main thing about this is that whenever the drone is out of range for its operator, the drone itself would not just fall to the ground, it will continue its combat mission and try to find the enemy positions and pretty much destroy them. Right, and now let's quickly go to the east of Ukraine and talk about the absolutely devastating ambush against Russians near Bakhmut, before switching our final attention to the south of Ukraine and talking about the new phase of the counteroffensive. But first, we just have to make a stop in the capital of Russia, Moscow, where partisans of the Freedom of Russia Legion, they destroyed the buses of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia at night. which pretty much tells you that anti-Putin opposition groups are already operating even in Moscow. But most importantly, they said that most likely by the end of this month they already have a surprise in Kremlin. So I'm personally extremely curious what's going to be, so just stay with us to see it for yourself as well. And speaking about more unfortunate events, for the last couple of days, Russia was doing missile and drone attacks against pretty much the entire territory of Ukraine. And just in this video alone, you can see the size of the crater which one these missiles left. But Ukrainian air defense was pretty superior at that moment, intercepting a total of 36 out of 39 Russian missiles and all 8 Shahid drones. Next we refer to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, which claims that Russians continue their offensive along Kupiansk-Svatove-Kreminna front line, making some insignificant gains. But most importantly, Ukrainians were able to ambush a whole assault group of Russian paratroopers, along with their armored personnel carrier, to the south of Bakhmut, next to Klishchiivka, as you can see from this video. The consequences are absolutely devastating for Russians. They simply did not expect this attack, and Ukrainians were absolutely victorious in this flash battle. And still, YouTube obviously will not allow me to show the entire version, that is why I uploaded it on my Patreon. The link is down below, still 1 week of free access. And going back to Bakhmut, Ukrainians continued to use the cluster munition against the position of Russians inside the city, and they do it very effectively. And according to Anna Malyar, even though there are heavy battles happening right now to the south of Bakhmut, Ukrainians are more successful and they are able to advance a little bit closer to the city, primarily because they're winning battles next to Klishchiivka, Andriivka and Kurdyumivka. And at the same time, Ukrainians continue to destroy multi-million-dollar pieces of Russian military equipment, as you can see for example from this video, using just simple drones. And as a result of this attack by Ukrainians, they're able to destroy 2 multiple launch rocket systems of Russians called Grad. And just overall, in the last 24 hours, Ukrainians were able to destroy 11 concentration of Russian forces, 2 air defense systems, 11 artillery systems, 2 command posts, and 1 ammunition warehouse of Russians. But okay, and now as promised, let's quickly go to the south of Ukraine, where there is a big increase in counter-offensive pressure by Ukrainians. But first of all, here is a quick update on Kakhovka water reservoir, because some of you are still wondering what's happening there. And long story short, as you can see from this video, grass already started growing on the bottom of this place. And speaking about the actual combat activities, reportedly the most significant fighting at this very moment is happening next to Robotyne. And then, as you can see from this video, somewhere along the Zaporozhye front lines, Ukrainians were able to destroy another heavy flamethrower of Russians called Solntsepyok. And yep, you guessed it, Ukrainians once again only used a drone. Next we once again refer to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, which once again confirms that yes, one of the main battles is happening right now to the south of Orikhiv, and Ukrainians were able to breach the first lines of defenses of Russians next to Robotyne, specifically to the east of this settlement. And the report also claims that this is one of the major weak spots of Russians, which has been discovered by Ukrainians along the Zaporozhye front line, and as a result of this, they were able to advance at least 2.5 kilometers deeper through this front line. But the most important part is that according to both Western and Ukrainian intelligence, Russians had the massive first line of defense in this region, because they were not anticipating that Ukrainians will breach it so fast, which basically means that the second line of defense at this very moment is either non-existent or it's very poorly prepared. And I mean, you can already see where I'm going with this. Ukrainians breach the first line of defense, they'll continue to expand and to exploit this exact weak spot, because later on the next advancement to the south will be not as complicated as before. In addition to that, one of the main reasons for success, it is because Ukrainians already employed their highly trained reserves in this attack next to Robotyne, while Russians, they were still the very same soldiers for the last several months. That is why obviously they are morally and physically exhausted. And yes, even the Western media confirms that the main strike of Ukrainians landed in the Zaporozhye region, and they used up to 80 military vehicles in this most recent attack. And in case Ukrainians are successful, they'll continue to exploit this advancement, hopefully all the way down to Tokmak and then to Melitopol. And just once again, according to both Ukrainian and Western officials, this successful attack by Ukrainians next to Rabotny, it basically started the new phase of Ukrainian counteroffensive, which will have much more pressure than previously. And in case Ukrainians are successful in their current offensive next to Orikhiv and Rabotny, and honestly I do not see a reason why they wouldn't be successful, the next major city on their way will be Tokmak, and then they will start getting closer to Melitopol, with the ultimate goal to get as close as possible to Crimean Peninsula, to keep the land routes of Russians on Crimea to be under artillery fire control. And it all basically means that the final goal of this current phase of Ukrainian counteroffensive will be to take fully this land road by Russians under fire control, so that they're not able to send their reinforcements to the south and to the east of Ukraine. In addition to that, it is now my personal assumption that in case Ukrainians will be successful in this direction, this is when they can start actively crossing Dnipro river from Kherson region, and in fact they already do it next to Antonovsky Bridge right here. So basically, long story short, in the end, we might see a big chunk of this entire Kherson and Zaporozhye region be finally fully liberated. And in this case, Crimean Peninsula, which is temporarily occupied by Russian forces, will be completely separated from the rest of Ukraine. And even President Zelensky previously mentioned that those Russians, both civilians and soldiers, who still remain on Crimean Peninsula, they should start thinking about leaving Crimea as soon as possible while bridges still stand. And to make things even more suspicious, starting July 31st, the FSB of Russia, which is basically modern KGB, will prohibit all the civilians from entering Arabat Spit, located right here. I can only guess why. And as a result of all this, the next month of August promises us to be full of events. Probably major ones. If you don't want to miss them, just please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes one click. Yes, do it. Subscribe to my channel. I'm not gonna leave it until you actually do it. So, давай, I'm watching, I'm waiting. The absolutely best way to support my work will be through my Patreon. You can also become my channel member, unlock some channel perks, or simply use a PayPal link. Everything can be found to the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи. Beware there are scammers in the comments. Please follow me on Instagram and see you tomorrow.